Chad Hasty Show, News Talk, 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. Today, joining me in studio is Texas Railroad Commissioner Ryan Sitton.
Howdy, Chad.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for letting me be here.
Welcome back. I know we had you on during your campaign. And,
yes, sir.
During that time, but glad to have you here. You are in Lubbock because you're going to be speaking over at Texas Tech today.
I am talking to the law school over there. They have a speaker series that I'm going to be a part of. So we'll be there, I think, noon today, talking for about an hour.
Yep.
So, we'll be hitting a lot of topics.
What are some of the things that you'll be talking about to the law school students?
Well, first of all, being the railroad commissioner and being an engineer and having had a career in the energy business, there'll be a lot of kind of oil and gas minutia, right? What's going on in the industry? Yeah. Where are commodity prices going? What are opportunities look like? And specifically from a regulatory and law and policy aspect, what are the things that we can expect to see in the short and long term? So we'll be hitting a lot of that nitty gritty. But then in the other part of this, we're going to be talking some election results. I mean, that's what's on everybody's mind. So It's, if you're not talking about that, you're not talking about the thing people are really thinking about and curious about right now. So we'll hit that too.
You know, when we we're going through the election, of course, we had a lot of talk about what Trump's campaign, and if he wins, what impact that'll have on the state of Texas. Viewing it from Railroad Commissioner. What does Trump's election mean for the state of Texas?
Well, let me back up and give you a little context. I, like a lot of people, had put way too much faith in the polls, right? In other words, I and other elected officials were already talking about, okay, what are we going to need to do to be ready for a Hillary presidency? Because obviously she had telegraphed she was going to continue the sort of liberal Obama anti-oil and gas policies, which are really detrimental to Texas. So we were bracing for that. So when you say all of a sudden Trump won and we were all elated, we're going, man, he has been very big on, one of his biggest messages, he's going to employ pro-U.S. policies in trade. Well, we sell a lot of natural gas to Mexico. We are opening up oil and gas exports now to other nations, other regions around the world. So I'm pretty excited that if he sticks to his message, sticks to his program, if you will, of let's pull back on regulation, let's allow states to handle that, let's employ a strategy of pro-U.S. trade, I think that's going to be very good for the state of Texas, specifically oil and gas.
Well, you look at a Hillary Clinton presidency, obviously anti-gas, anti-oil, a lifeblood of the Texas economy. And you look at Trump, and not only with oil and gas and energy, you look at, agriculture in general. You have to think in some of the trade deals that he wants to redo, you have to think it's just going to be better off for this state and for, a lot of the other states that have big energy commodities.
Yeah, you're right. You would think at a macro level, absolutely. I will tell you, one of the things that we look at, Texas is quite a unique state in the union. We are the 10th largest economy in the world on our own. Our oil and gas industry really competes on a global scale with the rest of the United States, with Russia, with Saudi Arabia. We buy a lot of parts, a lot of equipment that we use in the oil field from overseas suppliers. And in general, some of that stuff is good for our economy. So, we have a big seat at the table, and it's a seat that we have to take very seriously. Look, as a railroad commissioner, my job is I serve all 27 million Texans to make sure that our economy here in Texas is as strong as possible. And a big part of that, as you just said, is oil and gas. And we have to think in very complex, very broad terms to make sure we're serving the state well.
You brought up earlier trade with Mexico. Mm-hmm. One of the concerns I saw from some in the press who were writing about a Donald Trump presidency is that it would hurt the state's relationship with Mexico, and building a wall would hurt the state's relationship with Mexico. In the discussions that you've had, maybe with other lawmakers and, in discussions that y'all have had, with partners in Mexico, is that a concern of yours at all?
It's not a concern of mine in the logistical side. Frankly, it's a concern in perception. I was in Mexico 4 months ago, I guess now, talking with Mexican government officials, and what they're concerned about mostly is that trade rhetoric. Look, they say, we do $500 million of trade every day between Texas and Mexico, and I'll be very direct. That's good business for Texas. We sell tons of natural gas to them. Great revenues for us, great profits, opens up those markets. I think, though, in the long run, because those deals deals are good for us. I expect Trump and his administration are going to be supportive of those things. In fact, probably look for examples like that to take into other states where their trade deals are not good. So I think if we continue to drive that relationship and the people in Mexico know, hey, Texas guys they're big dogs. And that when we do business with Texas and we talk to the railroad commissioner, the governor, lieutenant governor, we're talking to the decision makers. I think that's going to continue and Texas will continue to do good business.
We're visiting with Texas Railroad Commissioner Ryan Sitton in studio. Since you won election and you've been on the commission, you go and you've given speeches and you've talked to a lot of voters out there. What is the question that, or maybe the idea that people get wrong the most about Texas Railroad Commissioner?
That we have something to do with trains.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, right? In fact, people joke all the time, Ryan, what are your thoughts on the name and name change? And I said, well, if we ever change the name, it's going to really steal some of my best punchlines because I get into it all the people, and they're funny because they're true. You'd be surprised how often I will sit there and talk energy policy, coal mining, and infrastructure, midstream, all those sort of things. I'm a 20-year engineer geek from the business. And then when people hear all that, they go, listen, Ryan, the high-speed rail between Dallas and Houston, I mean, when's that going to get done? And I kind of look down and go, oh, man, I can't do anything to help with that. And then they think, oh, what a worthless politician. You can't help with the thing that we hired you to do.
Yeah.
Oh, no. So that's the biggest confusion with our agency.
Is there any need at all? I think it looks like during this session the name change idea has been killed. But is there any need at all to update the name? Is that something that is needed?
Well, if you'd asked me that 4 or 5 years ago, said, Ryan, what do you think about changing the name? I said, absolutely not. The Texas Railroad Commission has played a prominent role in the history of the oil and gas business around the world. And that's a history every Texan should be proud of because really it's hard to overstate the impact. I mean, even the East Texas oil fields, when they were coming online, supplying most of the oil and gas that fueled the U.S. Navy and U.S. military in World War II. I mean, it's really a proud history for us. However, in this day and age where oil and gas has been growing in this state for the last 10 years at a rate it hasn't grown in a generation, got a lot of Texans that have questions about, hey, who's regulating this? I mean, I want to feel good about this industry that's so important to our state, but kind of a lack of awareness of what's going on. So it's certainly a subject that we need to talk about because we as commissioners and we as a state want people around the state to know what a great job we're doing and how important this is to the state. And sometimes that messaging can be tough when the name is confusing. So we'll see. I think it's definitely a conversation we need to have.
The legislative session begins pretty soon, early next year. You already have lawmakers who are filing bills today, the first day that lawmakers can do that. What's the relationship going to be between Texas Railroad Commission and the state legislature, and what kind of things do you anticipate, maybe bills being filed or maybe issues that come up that will affect the Railroad Commission?
There's a lot of issues that are fairly in the weeds. If I were to talk about, for example, allocation wells or maybe evaluation of how is the HB 40 legislation from 2 years ago, how's that working and people evaluating that? I think most of that though is not going to be issues that the average voter is aware of. It's not like school finance, which affects almost every single person in Texas. So I think the biggest thing that people will have some awareness of is the fact that the Railroad Commission is up for sunset again, which we're going through now. I will tell you that the legislature has been very proactive in working with us, asking questions. We on the flip side too have been very responsive. I've been over to the hearings 3 different times to engage in those, make sure that we are visiting with anybody who's got questions about what we're doing. So I'm optimistic that the sunset process is going to be both inquisitive. So I think the legislature is making sure that the voters have confidence in our agency. At the same time, it's going to be progressive in that people say, yes, we're doing the right things. We want to continue this, and we'll get a vote of confidence I'm hopeful about.
When it comes to future state budgets, when it comes to the future of oil and gas, where do you just, when you just kind of look at the oil and gas industry, where do you see things going here in Texas?
Well, if you're talking over the next year, It's going to continue to be tough for a little while. I think we're going to have oil prices for the next, say, 6 to 9 to 12 months hovering in this kind of $50 a barrel range. But I believe before the end of next year, we're going to see $60 a barrel. And that's from looking around the world at fundamentals around what it costs to produce oil in other regions and projects that have been brought offline. Some of the big offshore projects that have been furloughed over the last couple of years. When you look at some of the capital deployment, the number of rigs that have been running, production that's come down in places like Venezuela and in the United States. You hear OPEC talking about a deal. So everything we see says that the production and consumption should come into line, which should push prices up. So when I look 5 and 10 years out, I think that the opportunities for Texas look extremely positive. And when I go to places like I was at A&M last week, I'm going to be at Texas Tech this week. I'll be talking to these students about all of the opportunities for the next generation of energy professionals to really do things that are going to change the world in the energy business.
That's great. Commissioner Ryan Sitton, appreciate your time today, and wish you best of luck over at Texas Tech today to talk to all the young minds over there. That'll be the future for oil and gas industry.
Well, Chad, thanks for having me. It's always great to visit with you and all the people here in your area.
Yep. All right. Thanks for coming in.